hi everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Moana Nui Podcast. We're so very excited for this next episode with us. But before we get started, for those that may or may not know us, I'm Dana. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Moana Nui Podcast. I am a event cosplay and con staff photographer. You've probably seen some of my photography with Dragon Con, HomoCon, Anime Week in Atlanta, and last year with DC Comics. I also am a voice actor, an event planner, and a whole lot more. And now I'm going to hand it over to the yin to my yang, the other half that completes me, the person who established this platform for us to have this conversation, the dynamo that is known as the Renaissance woman of our time, the lovely, the beautiful, my sis, Moana.
Aloha mai kako, everyone. It's good to be back here on the podcast. I know we've been taking a little bit of a break, but it was a much needed one because mental health is important. And that's what we're talking about tonight. My name is Moana. And as Dana mentioned, I am the founder of the podcast. I am the author, children's book author for the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea series, editor and publisher here at Burning Spear Comics. A Kickstarter veteran, and an advocate for our BIPOC communities. And as always, we are happy to be here tonight and to be joined by a wonderful panel of guests, some who you've seen before and some who you may not have. So we are looking forward to introducing you to them and having a great conversation. Be sure to engage with us in the comments, be involved in this conversation. We definitely want to hear, some of the things that you might be experiencing when it comes to stigmas and talking about mental health and seeking health when it's needed, mental health when consulting when it's needed, or even developing your own self-care routines to ensure your own mental health. So I'll hand it back to Dana and she'll give us the intro for our panel tonight.
Exactly. Well, of course, as Moana said, we're going to continue our conversation. If you tuned in last week, we did the replay of this panel, the first part of this panel conversation about helping to end the stigma within mental health and therapy within BIPOC communities. We have this wonderful panel of panelists that we're going to have this conversation with. And I'd like to give a brief introduction and we're going to kick everything off. Our first panelist, you've probably seen on our show, she is a monthly guest on our show, is Shay Rains, LMSW. She is a licensed therapist. You've seen her on our podcast every month on the last Thursday for Rain Talks. So we have her with us. We also have our one of our favorite Ohanas of the podcast, who is author and creator of the comic book series Lumberjax, Mr. Morgan Iverson, who is also part of our panel. And of course, myself and my co-host, Moana, is also on the panel. And this whole panel is going to be moderated by DragonCon volunteer and Dynamo, Sheena Aoni, who is also the director of the Georgia box office. So definitely follow her about that. So I am going to hand it over to Sheena to go ahead and moderate this very important conversation in this panel.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate being here. Yes, you guys can, I'm the host and producer of Georgia Box Office, the show about the film industry. And you guys can follow me on IG at Sheena Alani. So I am so excited to be here again. We had such a great conversation last time. I was literally just watching it before we jumped on here to catch up and, see what we were talking about. We had some really great stuff. So I'm fixing to blast that when we get off because people still like it. All right. So just to recap, some of the things that we talked about a I wanted to say last week. It wasn't even last week. When was it? It was September, last month.
September,
Right?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about the stigma of mental health in BIPOC communities. We talked about dysthymia, which was basically you're just at this blah level and you can be happy for a little bit, you can be sad for a little bit, but you always come back to this basic level depression. And we talked about inheriting generational stress, which was super, super powerful. Shay, I had a conversation with a coworker recently, and he was saying, so he brought up the fact a friend of his is studying, and so not only can you inherit you can pass along your generational stress, you can also, so you pass along your genes, yes. But what his friend was studying is that like your physical peak at present, at the time of inception, is what you are passing along the most of. So like if you're at your physical peak, that's the majority of the genetics that you're passing along. If you're overweight, bad blood pressure, diabetes, that's what you're passing along too. So I just had to bring that up because I found that really interesting. Let's see. So, along with passing along generational stress, I was watching Antebellum this week. And some of the things in there really struck a chord with me, of course. But one of those things was that, we talk about breaking generational curses. And I think that a lot of BIPOC communities, especially Black people, because of slavery and everything, a lot of times the way that we discipline our children is too harshly, and it's a throwback to slavery. So I will open the forum. Whoever would like to talk about that can go first. Dana, I see you nodding your head. Would you like to speak?
Yes. Well, it's one of those things that they say, you learn parenting from your parents. And if your parents, it is continued passed down from your great relatives from slave times, that they were taught the only way to discipline is through, whippings and things like that. It continued to pass on in its own way. But the other part of it is we also don't learn how to handle or learn how to properly comprehend when we're upset, when it's our upset at our own self and not at our child or our offspring. And a lot of people put it out on that child that if they breathe wrong, oh, you got an attitude, and they whoop them or get after them. And there's also that misconception of when parents are felt that even though you realize after you calm down you were in the wrong, there's not that any kind of apology between your child. And it's like, it's kind of seems like it's been taught that it's beneath you to apologize to your child because you are the parent. And that is some of that stigma we have to break, because it's mentally being passed down constantly within our communities that this is the way, and that's what kids think. And then we also wonder why kids have this form of anxiety when they see a belt or a shoe come near them, because that's what they know. If they see something like that, that means I'm going to get hit. I did something wrong. So I think that is a big thing that we have to learn how to have healthy conversations, step away when we're upset, and calm down so we can know how to properly communicate and deal with situations with our children and from that. But that's my opinion. I won't let everybody else speak because that's a whole sermon for me.
Yeah, I think I want to build upon what Dana said, is because I've actually seen this happen in a part of my, like one of the other branches of my family. Um, and to see it perpetuate throughout the generations in, you know, in this line of cousins. And it's just disheartening to see it happening again and again, especially when one, two, three. So like a grandchild, you know, their grandmother, like, I guess so from the top, like, you know, her method of discipline was really harsh. So um, it's viewed by the children, who then pass it on to their children, and it passed on and passed on. And then when you hear story, I didn't see it, but I heard a story about when the grandson like essentially beat up on the grandmother, and nobody in the family even addressed it. Like everybody just kind of swept it under the rug, like it was okay. And like, just what kind of messages does that send? And this is like a grown grandson. Now we're not talking about someone who's like 5 years old. We're talking about grown, like in 20s, 30s, beating up upon a grandparent, right? Like, and when I heard that, I was like, my heart was broken, you know, because like I know that that kind of behavior has happened, but to see it like lashed upon the elders, which in our communities, like those are people who are supposed to be respected as treasures, as people who lead our community and who help us to, you know, navigate the things that come towards us. That kind of level of disrespect to me is super hard, because that's not how at our core we should be. So yeah, it's just really hard. And then another thing that Dana said was about parents when they do lash out in a you know, if they're not in a great place. I mean, we all know, we all deal with stress, right? And we might take it out on the loved ones, because those are the people who are always with us, the people who love us. And that they feel the brunt of whatever the worst days we have. But when parents don't apologize, like that's then what you're teaching your kid is, okay, do this is okay, and you don't have to apologize. So one thing that I do appreciate, I talk a lot about my dad because I really respect him a lot, is that there were times when he did that to us, like he lashed out for some reason. But his thing, like he would always come back and apologize. You know, he was like, I'm so sorry. He would say like, this is the action that I didn't mean it, you know, like I was in a bad place, whatever the situation was, but he would come back, apologize. I'm still human. I make mistakes, and I just want to apologize to you. So it's good to see that it's because the behavior happens, there's still a way in which we can address and handle things differently, even if it is a learned behavior. But it has to be conscious upon you, and you also have to be in a, I guess, a good position and willing to make the change and cut those generational things that tend to happen.
Agreed. And it's kind of, I kind of equate it in my mind. It's like, you know, master would like beat the slaves to break their spirits, and you're kind of doing that to your children. You know, like there's discipline, yes, but then there's too much of that, and then it, you know, it's like this is a child. You got to protect them. Anyone else?
I mean, I'll say it. So I came from, my grandmother raised me. So I know all about the shoes, the phone, the belt, the switch, 2 switches, tied together switches, the extension cord, the outside extension cord, like the joint that you use for it. You like whatever's around, you know what I'm saying, to make sure that you understand is what got used. So and a mean backhand. So you know, I know for me personally as a father, I think one of the things that is really cool to me about raising your kids is the fact that you start to see them as they start to get their own little personalities. One, you're going to see yourself in your kids, and it always surprises you when that happens. 2, as you get to know your kid, you get to know what it is that's going to be most effective for that kid to change the behavior. And beating your kid is not beating. Like if you beat all of your kids and your kid didn't need anything but you to just say, I'm disappointed in you. I'm hurt that you did that. I know it's very hard, but if you were raised a specific way to take it out of your brain that, all right, they did this, I gotta slap them to the floor because that's what grandma did to me. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to do that. But the other part of it is like, when we as much as we're talking about breaking the stigma, a lot of that comes from, one, that's what they were taught, but two, for Black people, and other minorities too, but definitely for Black people in America, the consequences for us are far greater if we make those mistakes that they're trying to keep us from. So that's the fine line that I think some parents, yes, they're angry, but I think they're also scared because they know if you pull that same stuff that you did in the house out of the house, you might not make it home to them. And it doesn't excuse it. It does not excuse, you know what I'm saying, the beating. But there's definitely a psychology to it. It's the same reason why in Black households we have the talk, you know, and other communities. I have white friends that are literally astonished that that's even a thing, because they don't believe it until you tell them. And even when you tell them, like, you have to explain it because it makes no sense to them whatsoever. And for every Black person, it's like, you what now? Nope, they never told you what. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of things that as a person of color, when we're talking about breaking stigma, there's a lot of stuff that you realize that you're going through life that you are breaking out of. And concerning beating your kids, I mean, I also one of the things I focus on is not recycling things that I didn't like as a kid and putting that on my kid. So, you know, my grandma slapping me and making my teeth click, I don't want to make my daughter do that. You know what I'm saying? Or my son or anything like that. That's it. It stays front of mind. I don't know if y'all had your teeth clipped before, but it's not a pleasant experience. So, you know what I'm saying? So those are things that I keep at the forefront of my mind, as well as the other stuff that you're trying to break, you know, trauma-wise.
Let me start out with, for those of us, I'm going to say this, for those of us who learned very early to fear la chancla. This one is also for you. Because watching or experiencing la chancla, or I'm sorry, the slipper, or you know, the wooden spoon or the metal spoon on a bad day, didn't matter if it still had food on it or not. You know, watching my cousins get literally chased around the house. Yeah, it's a thing. And everything everybody said, that part, right? But from the mental health professional part, I have to say something to the effect of explaining anger. Because when it comes to violence, because that's what we're talking about, if we frame it a little bit differently, maybe we'll do things a little bit differently. What we're talking about is teaching children with violence. We're teaching children how to be violent. And most importantly, for all you parents out there, you're teaching your children how to accept violence. So if you don't want your kid to walk out of your home and accept violence from someone else, you may want to rethink the forms of violence that you inflict upon them. If you don't want your children to accept violence, to understand violence as an acceptable form of discipline, as an acceptable form of teaching, then you may not want to inflict violence upon them. Because the lessons that you teach them are the ones that they're going to take outside the home. I understand the concept of
the stakes are higher for us. And especially because the stakes are higher for us, the likelihood that someone outside the home is going to subject our children to violence is higher, which means the last thing we should be doing is inflicting violence upon our own children. They already have to worry about that outside the home. They shouldn't have to worry about that when they get home. Home is supposed to be sanctuary. Home is supposed to be safe. Home is supposed to be the place where they get to make mistakes so that they can learn something different. Because the stakes are so high outside. If you don't want your kid to be taught through violence outside your home, if you're one of those parents who wish a insert expletive here would, okay, if you're one of those who would storm up to the school and put anybody down who would touch your child, consider not inflicting that upon your child yourself, because your kid will accept it. Or be the one who's inflicting it upon someone else's. That is what we are teaching our children. That's one part. The next part, like I said, is back to anger. Anger, as Morgan sort of kind of touched on, is actually more often than not a manifestation of fear. When you are looking at any being, whether it's your child or another adult, and you're thinking violent thoughts, and you're thinking you're angry, take a moment, like Dana said, to stop and think about what you're actually afraid of. Because when you act out in anger and then decide, let me apologize, which, okay, I understand what y'all are talking about. However, if we were talking about adults inflicting anger upon or inflicting violence upon each other, and let me be even more specific, if we're talking about a man beating up on his wife or his girlfriend, would we be okay with, well, he apologized afterward? Does that sound like something we'd be okay with? Because last time I checked, I'm pretty sure that's one of those things that the sisterhood, the Blue Brotherhood, the judges, several communities of people have already criminalized. This is one of those things that whole communities can rally around and say that's not okay. And the apology doesn't count. And if we won't accept it with adults, consenting adults at that, why in God's name, or whatever deity you choose or not choose, would we be okay with it with children, the most defenseless of us? Again, I understand what you're saying. It sounds great in theory, but apologizing to your child after inflicting violence upon them, as if that's supposed to make it okay, it's not. And I'm not saying, adults, that you shouldn't apologize to your children. The apology should be, you know what? That time when I yelled at you, or that time where I punished you, but you actually didn't do anything, not violently, but sent you to your room or lost my head or walked through the door because I was stressed out, and then all you did was want to show me your pretty drawing or whatever, and I said, get out my face because I'm tired, or I was dismissive. That's what you apologize for. Beating your kid? Having them go and pick out the switch? And then apologizing because you realize 20 years later that maybe they're contributing to your therapy bill, that's too late. Once you've already put the proverbial nail in the fence, it's a parable, feel free to YouTube it, nail in the fence. Okay, once you've already put the nail in the fence, taking the nail back out still leaves the wound. The hole is still there. Taking the nail back out is the apology. The wound is still there. You've already caused the damage. Apologizing for it after the fact just means now that you get to feel better about what you did. You get to let them practice forgiveness. Good job. But the wound is already there. Let's take a step back, figure out what you're actually afraid of, and instead of doing something violent, choose to have a conversation instead.
And so to piggyback off of that, and Morgan mentioned it a little bit earlier during his comment, but so I actually tried to have this conversation with a parent. I was like, hey, stop hitting me because I'm too old for that. I just resent you. And I'm old enough to where you can talk to me about what was done. But then, like, you're a kid, what do you know? And blah, 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 and all that extra baggage. And as a child, you just have to learn to, you know, like, take care of yourself and be like, all right, Lord, forgive them because they know not what they do and all of that. But, you know, it's like, I feel like parents really underestimate children. They're watching, they're listening, they comprehend way more than what you think. And so, yeah, let's try talking, right? Because, like, I really feel you should only be, like, disciplining, and this is just me, like, look, like, you know, like 5, 6, whatever. When y'all can have a conversation and it's not, like, that serious and it's, you know, the offense wasn't that serious, talk to your child.
Yeah.
And it kind of ties like what Shay you were saying earlier is it's not only just the apology, it goes to that saying action speaks louder than words. If all you do is apologize immediately after doing something and you don't change your behaviors, then all that is doing is teaching that child that same aspect. But then also I call it another level of it is no matter how old you are, a lot of older generations feel that if you try to correct them, you are being disrespectful. You are, I got in a conversation with this before when I was trying to help correcting about the misconception that gaming makes people violent. And I went behind it and said, so are you saying I'm violent? What do you mean by that? Well, I game. I know a lot of people that, you know, I work with game. And if that myth was true, there'll be a lot of more people in jail for murder and everything else if that stigma was true. And then all of a sudden it was like, I can't talk to you right now like that. And then completely hung up, got off the phone with me. And I'm like, so I can't have, even as a grown adult, you still can't have a conversation with me when I tried to correct you. And that is that constant you know, that's another part is adults, even for our age or younger, we have to learn that if our child or something calls us out or learns something that we have had a misconception or biases that's been taught to us throughout the years, and they prove it with facts and everything, we shouldn't shut that child down. We should listen to it and take the chance to learn and evolve, because if we want somebody outside of our community who does something wrong and we tell them, well, they should learn from what we're telling them, we should be able to do the same thing within our own families.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I will move on to my next topic. And Dana, you hinted on, well, you touched on this definitely in the last episode. Mental health and the workplace. You were talking about getting out the military and how you literally have to fight for your benefits because this happened to me and this, you know, and it's like, oh, prove it, right? And I met a woman who was a very successful financial analyst, and she quit her job because the workplace was toxic. She couldn't handle it. Her boss was not standing up for her, and in fact asked her, yeah, so like, how's your therapy going? Are you on medication? Sir, that's none of your business. So how do we deal with workplace trauma and PTSD?
I just want to say one thing before I let everybody else talk, and then I'll come back when everybody else says something. The first thing that I want to address and suggest is that we change the language. What you said was she couldn't handle it. It's not that she couldn't handle it. It's that she chose not to accept it. There's a big difference between I can't handle this and I won't accept this. So that would be the first thing that I would say. We need to change the language in terms of how it is that we manage, deal with, accept, or reject toxicity. It's not that we can't handle it, because we can. It's that we no longer are willing to.
Great point.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction that Shay just made, because there was one part of my career where I had a boss who was super toxic. I mean, he was flat out racist. I mean, he you know, like the ones that do this, they would hide, you know, like in front of their bosses, they would make like everything's all good. But you know, when it's just he and I talking, or he and a coworker, he'd be like, yep, like he would put me into situations where what my role is would be a detriment. It would like essentially be taking what I'm doing and making it positioning me to do things that would be illegal and get someone into trouble. And so, you know, like I sought out help from my peers, like to make sure like, hey, this is the situation that's happening. This is kind of how I'm viewing it. You know, other peers who are like doing the same type of work, how would you handle this? Like, am I off base here? You know, just making sure that before I go up, I have backing and, you know, I'm not really out of line or, you know, thinking in my head that it's crazy, being gaslighted essentially. But they're like, no, like what you're saying, like is totally like, I understand your concerns. It's like, okay, so I went up to my supervisors, oh boy network, right? They didn't care. They took up for him. And the part that like made me so upset was that there was another woman of color on my team in a different unit who like, it was like, I guess she wanted to advance so much that she was essentially following what my boss was doing and calling me out in meetings, like essentially like aligning herself with him. And I'm like, are you serious right now? So it's not like that it's only coming from, you know, white supremacy. It's also others who are trying to like be in the club or whatever. But I essentially got to that point where it was like, okay, I have done everything that I can do to address this concern. Could I have gone to like legal or something other than, yeah, absolutely, that was an option. But who would the stress be on? It would be on me, because the onus would be on me to prove whatever is being done. And we've already shown that the leadership is not going to stand up on my side. So for me, my way to resolve it and to maintain my own mental health was to remove myself from the equation. Was it fair? Absolutely not. But for my own mental health and sanity, I took myself out because that was the only way that I could really do it and just live with myself at the end of the day. So I definitely like the rewording of like choosing what you will and will not accept in the workplace. Was the dude wrong? Hell yeah, he's wrong. I found out later that he had multiple complaints, and it was this whole thing. But I was not going to be the person. If nobody else up to this point was going to like take it where it needed to go, then I'm not going to put that stress on myself, So yeah, I think that's really important to maintain that perspective.
2 cents real quick. So it's funny that you brought that up about the other woman of color aligning herself with the people in power, because this woman that I was speaking of and her boss were both African American, and her boss was aligning. He was new there. He was trying to make a name for himself, and he was aligning himself with the people in power and just not caring about her situation or not backing her up at all. So I think that happens a lot in the workplace. That was so in my situation, and I swear I probably still have PTSD to this day. I was working at a company that would look amazing on anyone's resume. And first of all, I was there 8 months, and literally someone was gone every month. They got rid of our HR company for a new HR company because it wasn't because we were contractors. And I am telling the new HR company, hey, literally people are leaving every month. They hire people and then they're gone. I don't see them again. Oh, you're blowing this out of proportion. Lady, you aren't here. I'm in the workplace. So she's gaslighting me the whole time, right? Because she don't know. She ain't been there. And then when it got really bad, my immediate supervisor was giving me the silent treatment. I would stand right beside another coworker, and she was talking to her, looking at her directly in the eye, and I would chime in, and she wouldn't look at me. It's almost like she couldn't look at me. So I'm glad to not be there anymore. But whoever else wants to chime in. But
I'll definitely give my speak. Like I have dealt, as we spoke in the previous episode, different realms of that, especially being a woman of color in the military. I heard, you get underestimated as a woman because I was in the Army. So you get underestimated as a woman. It's like you're going to be the one to quit. You have to prove yourself 10 times more than the guys. And then on top of that, it's like if you complain of any, pain or anything that is wrong, it must be your time of the month, must be this, must be that. And they blame it on stuff that is part of the, woman dynamic. And it's like, no, I'm not moody. No, I am not taking this the wrong way because it's my time of the month aspect. But then I'll fast forward it to corporate assistant. And as long as I've been in that role and also do event planning, people that are in that role, constantly you hear microaggressions and things towards that because your executive assistant, all you do is serve coffee and answer phones. Why would you give that to an executive assistant? That's not within their wheelhouse. And it's like, how you know what I can do? And things like that they will say to other leaders and things like that. And luckily, like where I'm working now, I have a leader that stands up and fights for the little person. And even though I have a lower position in the company, she constantly says, look, you need to talk to my boss. That's Dana. Talk to Dana. Ask Dana. Kind of aspect. So she gives that energy because that to others. Don't dismiss me because of what my title is. She's letting you know that she views me as her boss, and all versus vice versa. So it's one of those aspects that, especially in the civilian world, you have, classism that people battle against, along with racism. You also have code switching. Like, I've had a time that I came in for a job, and the woman who had only talked to me on the phone when she met me, she was sending me to onboarding for technicians. And I'm in there in a full business suit. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm Dana Morgan. I'm here for the executive assistant position. She straight said in my face, looked at me like, oh my gosh, I thought you were white. And it's one of those, it's like, why? Because how I talk within the corporate realm, you thought I was white and I didn't fit this position. And then you have to prove yourself even more because of who you are, where you're from, on top of that. So it's all these things people of the BIPOC community have to fight within their careers and within the corporate world, to be equal or seen the same as their white counterparts, or especially white male counterparts.
I love the reframing from the beginning, because I definitely believe in, and I had to go on a journey with that myself, of because I'm very much so a go with the flow type of person. So but there's a certain point, and I think it comes with your recognition of your self-value, and the more that you go through in your life overall, period, whether it's in any relationship, because that's another thing that in American culture gets overblown, especially in the workplaces, is there is more so of a hamster wheel, slave driver, rat race mentality to work, period. It doesn't matter what no, I was about to say genre. It doesn't matter what sector of the workforce that you're in. That's more so the thought process towards everything. And a lot of that is set up by Congress and, the laws and the regulations and lack of regulations that are there. And, like, if you don't realize your self-worth and then have confidence in yourself to be able to reproduce what you produced here, even whether it's on your own, that you're doing it for yourself, or finding a company that fits better, because another thing that you have to remember is that you working for somewhere is a partnership. They are paying you for your labor. You know what I'm saying? They're paying you for your skills. They're paying you for what it is that you bring to the table, which is why you have a resume. That if you keep it in your head, it is more of a partnership and not a slave, especially for those of us who are African Americans, and remembering that you have options. Your workplace wants to make you feel as though that's not the case. You know what I mean? Because of how American system is set up, but it's false. And you could have them trying to crush you. That's fine. But the more that every step that I've taken in the time period that I've gone through various forms of workplace nonsense. But once I got to the place where I was like, all right, like Shay said earlier, it's not about me. It's more so self-worth of realizing this is the height of what I'm going to take. It's not about what I can, it's about what I'm going to. This is the line right here. You can cross it, fine, but if you cross that, I'm going to remove myself from the situation and bet on me. And every time I bet on me, I won. You know what I'm saying? But it takes you taking the first step into you betting on you for you to get there. And that's a scary thing to do. You know what I'm saying? That's a mental health process too, because you become stronger every time you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And sometimes you're going to be pushed in uncomfortable situations in your life in all kinds of manners and fashions. But but the confidence in yourself, you can really grow to become a better person, a more complete person. And I mean a better person in terms of we can block ourselves from the growth that we could have because we allow ourselves to stay in that place of fear, so that you're too afraid to step out and have confidence in yourself. But the moment that you start breaking that wall down, you got a whole nother animal on your hands. And more importantly, in the workplace, they realize that. One of the things, a good boss especially, one of the things that most good bosses are good at is being able to place confidence and skill sets of certain people. You know what I mean? And when you start to break down those walls of you losing your own confidence, then they don't have to pump you up as much, so they can give you more faster, and you can start to run faster if you get the right boss. And if you're not in a situation where you see that, then you just got to move on and do what you got to do, because you can't spend your life living on somebody else's terms the entire time. And in America's work system, that is exactly how it's set up to work. There's other countries don't have this issue. Other countries are starting to break those things down and give you more time off, better work-life balance and stuff like that. America doesn't want that. So you have to bet on you. You have to, and I know it's scary, but I promise you, it's worth it. It's worth doing.
So one thing I love about COVID that happened, a major thing that happened, were that people were in these horrible work environments, low pay, and they're like, you know what? I don't have to take this.
Amen.
And they left.
Amen.
And the food industry, in one in particular, because I've been so busy lately, I've had to get fast food, that they are suffering for it. The Hardee's for me closes at 4 p.m. now. Wow. Taco Bell, ain't no fourth meal. You got to get your meal before like 9 p.m. I was at Captain D's last week, and I was there like 6:53, right, getting my food. As I'm waiting for my food, she's putting up a sign like, "Yeah, we're closing at 7 because we don't have enough staff."
Love it.
So,
I mean, I'm sorry, but love it. I have to do, well, I don't have to, but I'm going to do a bit of a self plug because I started my business, Do More Require Better LLC, based on this premise in particular, because I realized, through study and through life that, we spend, of course, we'll say 8 hours a day at work, right? But we also spend, let's say, another 2 hours getting ready for work, another 2 hours after that, leaving work and trying to get home. And then we spend several hours trying to recuperate from work, right? We spend the weekend trying to recuperate from work and doing more work at home. So let's call it, we have roughly 8 hours at the end of the week for ourselves. Maybe. And usually those 8 hours are just for sleep. That's 8 hours a whole week. Okay. The rest of the freaking week is all work. Whether it's work at the workplace or work at home or work trying to get to work or work trying to recuperate from work, it's all work. And when you go to work, what they say basically is leave your personal life at home. Sir, ma'am, what personal life? You mean my 8 hours? Leave your issues at home. You mean the issue that I have with my boss? The issue that I have with my coworker? The issue that I have on my way to work with the drivers? The issue that I have because I'm trying to get to work? You mean those issues?
Yes.
I gotta leave those at home?
Mm-hmm.
When
but bring your authentic self to work, though.
Right. So I started my whole company with the understanding that, and I'm going to say this, it's going to be one of the most unprofessional things I say, and I'm sure you'll all forgive me, but they got us fucked up all the way. All right. And I say that because we need a redesign. And I'm so glad that people are recognizing that this redesign is on us. We are going to get to decide how it is that we get treated from now on. We are going to teach these employers how to treat us. Now, there's a thing that we learn about called trauma-informed care. Okay, having a trauma-informed perspective is actually a thing. There are many nonprofit type organizations that are actually actively implementing this, where from the top down, all levels of an organization are being designed and redesigned to be trauma informed. And what that means is that these organizations recognize that they employ human beings. I know it sounds insane. In case you didn't know, we're all people and we all have shit. I know it sounds crazy. I'm gonna give you a second to deal with that. So the trauma-informed care or the trauma-informed approach is designed to understand, accept, and work with human beings in the workplace. And so what my company does is it helps companies learn how to become more trauma-informed and people-centered, more inclusive. That is what the design is. That is what the mission statement is to help companies, private sector or otherwise, become more trauma-informed, which requires, do more, require better, people to also acknowledge their own trauma. Because if you're sitting there as upper management and you're dealing with your significant other who's about to leave you, your kid who has a crack habit, and I say that and I apologize, that's my other job talking, because apparently people around these parts, all their kids have some kind of a crack habit. I say crack, I use that as a blanket term for drugs. So drugs, alcohol, if your kid has a drug problem, I call it a crack habit. I apologize or not. But the fact is, if you're there and you're dealing with all of these life things and you too are being told that you have to leave your personal life at home, and then someone sits in front of you and is like, I know you're paying me several $100,000 because, you know, we're talking about upper management. I know you're paying me several $100,000, but I need a raise and the corner office. If you react with, let me show you which window you can jump out of, you may actually lose your job too. So it's really important that you too get to deal with your trauma. Okay, it's really important that you too get to handle your humanity, get to learn how to deal with your humanity so that you can better deal with other people's humanity. And so when it comes to the question of how do we deal, one, we change our language, and two, we learn how to recognize the humanity in each other. Recognize that our bosses are human beings too. I know it's crazy. I know. And we don't necessarily want to, but we don't always know whatever it is that they're going through, why it is that they sent this supremely insensitive email. And it's probably because little Johnny or Susie or Ray Ray or whatever has a crack habit. Their wife is about to leave them. Their boyfriend, because, you know, some of them, they got both. You know, their boyfriend is asking for more, and their second family wants palimony. Like, you know, you don't know what's going on. So remember the humanity and the other people and the person on the other side of the table, regardless of what level of management or non-management. You know, the janitor accidentally rolls over your foot with the trash. Don't necessarily jump straight to who are you to roll over my foot. Remember that maybe, you know, he's got the same list or she's got the same list of trauma, home things, life things, human things going on that you do. People have bad days. Some people have bad lives, and being able to recognize that is supremely important in the workplace so that we can learn how to be a little bit more flexible and a little bit more forgiving. And of course, just to do a little bit more and require a little bit better of ourselves. So there's my plug several times over. That's how we do it.
Yes, much needed perspective, I think. I mean, that also kind of goes back to what Morgan was saying, and with America and capitalism and driving us to like we're robots, like we're born to just work. Like, no, nobody ask yourself that question. Is this what I'm like? Is this what I was put here for? To be a freaking rat on a wheel? Like, no, that's not good quality of life. Nobody wants that crap. Um, and it just kind of makes me think about as I'm doing research more about like my own culture and my own history, like Native Hawaiians back in the day, like we only worked 3 days of the week. Doesn't mean that things didn't get done. It was done. Like Hawaiians were up early and their shit was done by noon. And the rest of the day they're out relaxing, surfing, like doing all that stuff, having a well-balanced day. Like a lot of the stuff we do now, I think it's just busy work, like to justify something, the ridiculous prices that they charge us. All of this stuff. There are ways to seek out efficiencies, but when you're someone who has all the resources in the world, you have no reason to think about how can I do this better? When you have communities of color who are like, well, we got limited shit. We got to figure this out. Get it together, do it quicker, do it smarter, because we don't have that luxury, So I'm really glad for Shay's perspective. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, and then because you're working and in that rat race, you don't have time to deal with your feelings and emotions. What's
Right.
that? Stuff those down.
Yeah.
We got to get to this job. I'm on a budget and I need this check.
Right. Yes.
And it's kind of funny because along with that rat race here in America, they also push the only other option is when you become your own business owner, life is so much different for you. But no one talks about the additional stress and the worry and the financial and dealing with people doing things shady and all that other stuff. They don't talk about that portion, but you keep seeing people repost. If you hate being in the rat race, own your business, get your LLC, all this other stuff. But it's like it's easier said than done because going into that world, you're dealing with a whole different element of mental stress, physical exhaustion, everything else, because you have to work even harder because you are trying to make that money, establish yourself, unlike working in that rat race. So it's like it's that double-edged sword. If you go either way, it's not that rags to riches instantly because you started your own business. You're going to be the next Sam Walton and have a new Walmart. It's like, no, that's not. They don't talk about everything he went through to make Walmart happen and all the changes happen after he stepped down from Walmart and for his brand. It's a whole different ball game. And a lot of people think that's the only way you can have that mental clarity and that happiness is having their own business. But that's a whole different basket of eggs you're dealing with.
Yeah. I saw a meme just yesterday that was like, I got tired of working a 9 to 5, so I started my own business, and now I work 24/7.
Yep, I literally just reposted that one on the IG today. I thought that crap was hilarious.
I got tired of working 9 to 5 for other people, so now I work every day of every minute for myself. I'm running on 2 hours of sleep right now. I was taking a nap before we got on call. Yes. I have my business and I have 3 other jobs because I need healthcare. So yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's I'm glad that Dana said, I mean, because everybody's not, and that's why, like, I think that's another thing that's important as you're getting to know. I think that's another thing that's cool about being human and realizing you're human in your experience. Like one of the things that I see that I'm really, I think is fascinating is like every, I'll say for me, every 10 years, my mindset about almost everything changes.
Yeah,
drastically. And the sooner that you can start to wrap things, like I know for me personally, like once you get to the point, like if you're going to jump, I have the utmost respect for entrepreneurs, period. I don't care if you just run a lemonade stand. It's not easy to do. because you're betting on you to the umpteenth. You know what I mean? Like to the umpteenth, you're doing it. And yes, you could fall back on something else, but that's still a decision and a choice that you're making to fall back to something that's still going to require you to go to pull and do what needs to be done to get where you need to go. But when you're going through the rat race and you can get yourself to a place where you're willing to bet on you for something that you're passionate about. So like that's one of the places I'm trying to steer my daughter into is find what you're passionate about and figure out a way to monetize that. Because if you're going to work 24/7, if you're going to work your behind off, if you're going to do that, that's the big thing, is remembering and understanding you're going to do that whether you want to or not. So whether you have your own business or you're working for somebody else, they're going to do whatever it takes to get all they can out of you until you say, hey, stop it. You know what I'm saying? Or you walk. So one way or the other, when you're going to do what you got to do, that you just have to decide what path you're going to take. And everybody's not built for the entrepreneur path. And understanding that is important.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Understanding that is important. But if you can find what you're passionate in and figure out a way to monetize that, it can be a beautiful life, even though you're tired. You can be dead freaking tired. You know, you can go on a vacation with family and be wore the F out. You and your kids, your husband, or whoever else you went with, wore out. Don't want to breathe no more. Somebody else can breathe for me. You know what I mean? But the memories that you have from that day of being wore out are worth it all. And when you can look at somebody like Tyler Perry, who goes from sleeping in his car to being a billionaire, and you can look back on that and have that not only for yourself, not only for your kids, but for other people to be able to siphon off of that and find their strength in you. That to me is what makes it worth it. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the reasons that I write, and I'm trying to get where I want to go, because I love writing when I was young, and I gave it up because of other, you know, all kinds of stupid stuff that doesn't have anything to do with anything but me trying to fit into society. And I gave it up. I dropped it because I was like, man, y'all not about to be picking on me all the daggone time. This is enough. You know what I'm saying? And I stopped doing it. But as I got older and circled back to it, I want to make it so that I could provide those opportunities to pull somebody else up. But two, I want to be that inspiration for somebody else to say, I can start over. I can go after my dream right now at 30, at 40, at 50, at 6. I don't care what age you are. You're capable of doing it. You just have to figure out how to monetize that, make a plan. And then your plan might not your plan might not work, but if you have one, you can start it. And then you can adjust as you go, but you need to start. The hardest part is starting. Yeah. And if you keep walking after that, you know what I mean, you're going to get where you want to go more often than not.
I want to also just, because you mentioned that your mindset changes every 10 years, and studies show actually that change, that's pretty much everybody. And it actually starts just about every 7 years. And your most significant one you may remember will say, you might remember 27. When you were 27, everybody's take a second to think back to 27. There was something going on right after that quarter life that all of a sudden made you question your entire existence. It could have been, man, do I really need this car? It could have been, man, this dog, I think I might choke it. Like it might have been, all your friends just don't work for you anymore. But 27 is a magical year for a lot of people. And that's one of those very significant changes that brings you into 30. And then the next one starts almost immediately after that, or so you think. But it's basically just another 7 years later. Studies show 7 years. Every 7 years, you will have a shift. And it's a mental shift, it's emotional shift, it's a life shift that brings you into the next phase of your life that may be your next decade, or it might just be that 7 year where you realize you gonna choke the hell out of these kids or they gonna get the hell out. Like whatever the case may be, that's where you go. It's whatever you're going through life, that's how that tends to happen. It's every 7 years.
Yeah.
I agree.
Just wanted to throw that out there, that it's not just you, it is a universal truth.
Oh, that's great info. Dana, how much time do we have?
We have 20 minutes.
Oh, snap. Okay, this was longer than I thought. Okay, so for Dragon Con, we just had an hour. I was like, cool. All right, awesome. I have another question. So we touched on coping mechanisms in the last one, but I wanted to expound upon that. So a lot of people cope with their mental stress and problems in not the most positive ways. So let's talk about both. Let's talk about the negative first, and then let's go to the positive, right? So, people drink, smoke, do whatever. What is that actually doing to people? And how is that hurting rather than helping? Because, it's for the moment, but you're not dealing with the actual problem. And you need to get to the root of any problem to fix it. So, Hannah,
I'm going to go ahead and say, and I know she's going to expound on it more. What me and Moana learned from Shay before, all those coping mechanisms, it only becomes negative when it affects you in a negative way and the people around you in a negative way.
I'll listen.
I'll be listening. So yes, you can have that glass of wine, because sometimes you may need that glass or a whole bottle, depending on how your week went. But as long as it doesn't affect your productivity, how you do things, it doesn't affect your household, affect your relationship with your loved ones and stuff. And that's when it becomes from a coping mechanism to a negative coping mechanism, when it is totally just turning your life completely around in a negative aspect. But you'll have some people that go for runs, or and that could be negative because that they're constantly out there, you finding them doing it, and people were like, oh well, running is not that bad. But if they're doing it constantly and avoiding their family, constantly staying away and everything because they're going on these marathons, then it went from something that could have been positive to a negative. So it was one of those, we have to figure out our own balance of is it a coping mechanism, or is I'm trying to escape and not face it at all. And I don't care who goes down with it. As long as I escape, that's fine. So it's one of those, that's what I take from it. And I'm gonna let everybody else speak. And I know Shay's gonna take it to church and let the choir sing.
Look, Shay's so proud. I am proud mom over there.
I'm like, I don't even say nothing.
That's awesome.
Oh goodness.
I think another maybe aspect to add onto that is where things can become negative is if your coping mechanism also hurts you financially, right? Like, so, I mean, there's that where we could affect the people around us, but whether it's drinking, drugs, any of those, but even like shopping and having an addiction to, I don't know, purses or whatever your vice is, you doing that way, particularly if you are someone who's running a business or taking care of a family. Like, are you also taking money outside of what could be used to set your kids up for their future? All of those other kinds of things that are underlying, but we don't. Those aren't the ones we usually talk about. We usually talk about the surface one: alcohol abuse, drugs, smoking, health effects to the body, all of that. But I mean, financial ruin can also cause those effects to your health as well. So
you're totally right. Retail
Yeah.
therapy can be like
Mhm.
taken to a whole new level. I forgot what movie it was, but it was some movie. This girl had frozen her credit card in a block of ice, so she couldn't use it anymore because she was maxing out all her cards, and then it got like to like serious levels.
Yes,
And then she's like chipping the ice block. I
yes,
don't remember what that was, but yeah.
yes. Oh
Right.
man, I can't remember the name either, but yes,
Me
I
neither,
know
but I remember that scene. Yeah.
yes.
I agree with y'all. I mean, I think I definitely agree with Shay's awesome teaching that stuck. I think anything that you do too much of can be a detriment to you and become negative.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Yep.
Like, if you're working out, you can like if you lift weights, you can overlift. You know what I'm saying? You can strain your muscles and set yourself back. You can, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you don't find a balance to it, then it can become negative. But I think it's also good to, when you have somebody else to rely on, whether it's a really good friend, whether it's a family member that you're close to, whether you have a therapist, that can help you see those things. Because a lot of times you're in the middle of it and up against it, you know what I'm saying? And you're definitely missing the forest for the tree, you know what I'm saying? Because you're in the middle of it. And sometimes you need somebody with perspective. And it definitely depends on you as a person, how you best receive information, how you best take it in. Like I know for me personally, I have, 2 male best friends and a female best friend, and I have to talk to them differently because the way that I talk to one of my male best friends, I could not talk to my other male best friend that way, because we're gonna be thumping for sure, because he's too, you know what I mean. But then one of mine, we are extremely blunt with each other, to the point that if somebody else was listening to the conversation, they would question whether we're even friends. You know what I mean? But it's because one, that's how he needs it. That's how he needs to hear it. But two, I need to hear it that way sometimes too, because sometimes you need like that quick, smack in the face to really make you be like, oh, wait, what? And I might be mad at you for a second because you smacked me, but I have a mind, you know what I'm saying? I have a and we both do that to each other. You know what I'm saying? We might be mad in that moment and get into an argument and leave it alone, but once we go our separate ways, we're still thinking about what the other one said. We'll reanalyze it and then come back and be like, you was right, blah 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes that's the part that I would add to what y'all had already said, because that was, great. I think like having somebody else that you can rely on, and if you don't have a friend that you feel like you can rely on like that, or a family member that you feel like you can open up to about that, that's literally what a therapist is for. It's a safe box, be able to go and talk to them and say whatever it is. And like, hopefully you didn't murder a bunch of people. Like that would be great. But if you did murder a bunch of people and you told a therapist, they can't say anything. See? So
no, actually that is not true. Don't lie. Don't you tell that lie.
I thought she was gonna let it go. God dang it. I thought she was gonna let it go. Oh,
no, sir.
All right.
If you murder a bunch of people and you tell your counselor, especially if you tell them first, we have to respond and report. Do not murder anybody. You say, ooh, I'd really like to kill somebody. And then if you say a plan, now we have to report. No. Don't you tell them lies, sir.
That's right. Because if you're a detriment to yourself or other people, then y'all have to be like, okay, we gotta call in the big guns.
I tried to float it out there. Shay just wouldn't let me live. Wouldn't let me be great.
Yeah, we don't want to get people hemmed up out here.
Exactly.
Don't murder people, guys.
Yeah, don't do that. Control your anger.
Exactly. And
I mean, I didn't say you should. I said, hopefully you don't. That's what I said, exactly. But I get it.
But to echo on what Morgan said, another aspect is the people you talk to make sure they're not just your cheerleaders, because so many people surround themselves with just echo chambers, I call it. They just want to hear what they want to hear. And if the people around you or people that you care about gets mad when you correct them, or you don't support what they're doing and you know they're wrong, that's not a friend. That's an associate. That is someone who just wants you to be there for the good times, the fun stuff, and just be an echo chamber. A true friend is going to call you out on your BS. They're going to call you out when and like you said, Morgan, and you got to have those different levels of people. You have your mediator friend. You have, like Morgan said, that blunt friend was like, you're going to have your friend that is the come to Jesus mother type, friend that's going to be like, come on, let's bring it in. Let's cry it out. Let's talk about this. But you need those different aspects that they can still give you that support, but call you out on what you're doing and make you accountable. If all the people around you are just saying, cheering you on, good or bad, those aren't your people. You need to reevaluate your circle.
If that's happening, you need to find, I'm not saying you got to kick people out your circle necessarily. I mean, there definitely are times in your life, probably that every 7 years, that you might need to readjust your friend set. You know what I mean?
You need to promote and demote folks from friendship to associates to friendships.
Because every 7 years you're gonna start going through some different stuff, and you need to start reassessing and looking around and be like, all right, now who was here when I was about to tear all this stuff off the wall? Okay, they were here. I'll keep them, and then the rest
started tearing stuff off for me. Wait a minute.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So, or you got those friends that'll gas you up, and they'll gas you up on stuff that you ain't got no business being gassed up on. Put a battery in your back and watch you destroy,
and sit back and laugh,
and tell your business. Like, that's one thing I would definitely tell people. Look, if you have a friend, I know this ain't the topic, but if you have a friend that will spill somebody else's information to you, if you think they're not spilling yours, you are mistaken. And that's a nice way of me saying that. If you have a friend in your circle that is telling somebody else's business to you, and you think they're your safe box, I'll just say in my experience, that's not at all true. If they spilled it before, there's a hole still there. You don't have to worry about that now. You just have to decide whether or not you're going to continue to spill your beans to them. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Dana, you touched on something that I've been seeing on social media.
One thing? I'm so sorry. I know I said that y'all, you got it, Dana. Good job. You got it, Moana. You got it, Morgan. Y'all got great stuff. The question you specifically asked was, what are these coping mechanisms doing to us? You did ask that particular question, and I did want to address that. Your coping mechanisms, of course, can help or harm you depending on the level of balance that in which you experience them. It's important to have coping mechanisms. Okay, let me repeat that. It's very important to have coping mechanisms. It's when your coping mechanisms become a crutch or a habit, or when the coping mechanism now has control. So let's say, for example, you're one of those people who needs to go out and take a walk, and you find yourself walking all the time. You're not actually dealing with the problem, because at some point you still have to come back home and have the conversation with your significant other, or you have to come back home and actually work out a budget because your finances are in shambles. You have to come back home and actually apply to some new jobs because you're in a toxic work environment, and continuing to allow your work environment to make you walk is not helping you. So when your coping mechanisms are crutches and you're no longer actually taking action to fix the problem, that's when it's a problem. That's when the coping mechanism also becomes a problem. So what are your coping mechanisms, especially your negative ones, doing? They're compounding your problems. They're adding to your problems. So if you're not allowing yourself, let's say, for example, to experience your pain, experience your hurt, experience your frustration, because all you do is you drink it away. You know, if you have that 7 bottles of, I learned a new term in this new job. It's called a handle. I'm not completely sure what a handle looks like, but apparently there's a thing called a handle.
It's a gallon.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so people out there drinking a gallon of liquor. Not a gallon, I'm sorry, several gallons. Someone told me that they had seven handles a day. Now that I understand that's 7 gallons.
Maybe
that's more water than I drink in a week. That's insane. I'm sorry.
I know what a handle is around my way. Maybe they talk about a different handle because that sounds like death.
That's a lot. But I'm sorry. That's notwithstanding. I learned the term handle and wow. Anyway, so if you're having 7 handles, you're not handling, which is why it is that I chose that one. You're not handling anything. You're not feeling the actual full spectrum of your emotions. You're not dealing with whatever it is that you're going through. That handle is handling you. And this goes with just about any coping mechanism. It doesn't have to be drinking, doesn't have to be smoking, doesn't have to be drugs. Whatever it is that you're using to, as Dana alluded to, escape your situation, it's still going to be there. And so you're just going to keep on leaning on this thing, whatever it may be, to not have to deal with it. It's better to experience that pain, to experience that. I know everybody's like, I don't want to feel this anymore. Okay, so feel it. As your therapist, I will not say that. As your friend, as your accountability partner, I'm be like, okay, so we're just going to sit here and we're going to feel that feeling now. As your therapist, I'm going to ask you several questions to hope that you actually come to the conclusion yourself that maybe it's better to just feel it. Because as your therapist, my job is to give you tools. You have to feel and decide to feel your stuff yourself. But I'm going to give you the tool to help you through whatever it is that you aren't handling. You still have to make the decision to use it. It is always better. I don't care if the situation is your leg fell off and you are feeling the pain in your leg. It is better to acknowledge the pain in your leg and go get your leg taken care of than to simply sit there and take pain medication to try to not experience that pain in the moment. First of all, I'm going to need you to recognize, why did your leg fall off in the first place? Okay? Again, as your therapist, I'm going to be like, oh, your leg fell off. What would you like to do about that? But as your friend, as your accountability partner, I'm be like, why your leg falling off though? If you can't even get to the point where you recognize that your leg just fell off for a reason, because a leg does not just fall off. And I say a leg, but I mean, your finances didn't fall off for nothing. Your relationship didn't fall apart for nothing. And y'all are going to hate me for this. Hard to swallow pills, especially when it comes to relationships with other human beings. It is never only the other person's fault. I don't care. Y'all gonna hate me. If you're in an abusive relationship, half of that is still your responsibility. Guess why? Because you are choosing to stay in the relationship. If you take yourself out of that, guess what? You can't get abused anymore. So half of that is still your responsibility. Find out why your leg fell off. Then pick it up and go get that leg taken care of. Whatever the leg may be, proverbially. Because that is your 50% of the equation. It may be that someone walked up and chopped it off. Okay, someone walked up and chopped off your leg. Now it's still your responsibility to go and get your leg fixed. We're not going to sit here and just complain about somebody chopping off your leg and taking pills to get rid of the pain. No, you're going to go to a doctor or a medical professional or a counselor or somebody to help you sew your leg back on so that you can get back to walking. If your crutch, if your coping mechanism, if your whatever that is keeping you from getting your legs sewn back on, then you must really enjoy just having the one leg and bleeding to death. And if that's the case, get you a counselor so that you can figure out why you're enjoying bleeding to death.
That was great. That was great. All that I was going to say is, Dana, you touched on this when you were speaking, but positivity can be a crutch too. I have a friend who is like the most positive person in the world, and they speak into their life, but when you look at their actions, the actions are none. You ain't doing nothing. You got action, like what's it? Faith without action is, I don't know, something about it's the Bible.
Faith without works is dead.
Thank you. You're not getting anywhere. So you can be this, but your life and your results show otherwise. So yeah, let's fix that. Like, why aren't you doing anything? Like, get your leg fixed. You can speak positivity all you want, but you're not doing nothing about your situation.
Oh, that's a beautiful leg laying on the floor. Isn't that a great looking leg? That is a great looking leg.
Okay.
The sexy leg, the shaved leg.
Legs, I want that one. So
I'll make it into a lamp like they had in the Christmas story.
Oh, Lord.
leg.
Oh Lord, please don't get your legs turned into lamps. Don't just look at the leg like it's decoration. That's a toxic positivity. Let's not do that.
Yes. Agreed.
I did look up a handle. It is about one. Well, they said there's no approximate measurement, but it's like 1.75 liters around there, so a little bit less than half a gallon. So if you did a handle, you probably did half a gallon or somewhere.
Still a lot. My God,
That's still a lot.
That's a whole lot. I mean, you're gonna be on the floor for sure. So
I mean, just think about a 2 liter of soda. It's a little bit less than that. God damn.
Yeah.
Hey.
And the fact that they were drinking 7 of those, they were disassociating with life a lot.
Right.
For sure, they weren't living for a little bit of that time.
Yeah.
They just didn't realize it. I've been way worse for less.
Okay.
I comparatively, like, that's man. Well, you know what? I'm gonna say congratulations for surviving drinking 7 handles a day.
Right.
It's very impressive.
Even if that's like a regular size bottle, that's ridiculous.
They're probably a superhero.
Yeah.
They just didn't.
No, they're definitely not a superhero. They're definitely
a villain.
And their doctor's probably looking at that liver like
actually almost on their deathbed right now. That is why it is that they had to have a conversation with me, because I work in a hospital now, and so them 7 handles a day caught up to them, and they liver just
that liver went with that much.
That liver said I can't, I refuse to handle this anymore. Yes. Don't let your body don't put your body in a position to make the decisions for you.
You never lied. I did, and it's not pleasant.
That's a lot.
Sorry. Well, are we out of time?
Yes, we're right at the top.
Well, I want to thank. Sorry, we were talking about drinking, and I was like, "Let me drink my water."
And went down the wrong pipe. Well, while she's getting her breather, we might, as far as the Moana Nui Podcast, like to thank everybody for coming onto our podcast to continue this conversation from Dragon Con. And as we're wrapping up, we'd like each person to tell the audience of where they can follow them on social media so they can like, follow, subscribe on your platform. So let's start with Morgan.
So you can follow me when I'm not blocked at Morgan Iverson on Facebook. There's a vendetta against me of some sort, and I'm not really sure what's going on. But Morgan,
We told
Iverson
them
on Facebook.
you just don't let everybody follow your personal profile. You need to shift them to your pages and not follow you on profile, because there's haters that will follow you just to hate on you.
Obviously.
And shake your phone. Shake your phone and turn off that new setting that they did in that update. Shake your phone, turn off the auto report.
Yes, auto reports. Mm-hmm.
I might need to do that, because I get banned for sneezing, coughing. It don't matter what it is, 30 days too. So I get my Facebook back sometime tomorrow. Morgan Iverson on Facebook, Lumberjax on Instagram. Or you could just go to www.fourthwallpros.com. That's got all of our links. And my podcast is Top 5 Live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right. And Shay.
You can find me on the interwebs at pretty much anything at Roeigen, REIGN, the letter O apostrophe change, CHANGE. That's pretty much all of my social media except for my personal one. And yeah, I'm not necessarily accepting all applications on my personal one anymore. So yeah, so Reign of Change on Twitter, on Instagram, TikTok, all of them. That's how you find me there. Also, you can find my podcast, The Conversation, on the Metropolis Network. That's on Facebook. That's on all of your podcasting outlets, YouTube, the Metropolis Network. You can find The Conversation. And I'm also doing another podcast called Ish, where I also have a co-host. ISH is the name of the podcast. And we do get, we'll say, very unprofessional, but specifically the message that I have, that we're doing a lot of right now, hashtag make sex great. So if you want to hear more about that,
yes,
so check us out on Ish. Yeah, so we're the next couple episodes you're going to see, we're talking a lot about that. We are hoping people will submit ideas for how we can make this a logo, because it's MSG, and you know how you see no MSG. So we want to actually do like a check mark or something, whatever your ideas are. So we're accepting those submissions to see how we can turn this into merch for Ish. So yes, so we're doing that. Also, I show up every last Thursday of the month right here on Moana Nui. And yeah, just look around. You'll find me. Exactly. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Okay. And Sheena.
Again, you can find me on George Box Office. Just Google it. We have a YouTube channel, a couple episodes on Amazon Prime. And you can connect with me at Sheena Alani, right down there in the little name tag thing. I'm that on IG and Twitter. So yeah, find me.
All right. And Moana.
Well, you guys can find me weekly here on the podcast, at The Real Life Moana on Instagram. I don't do the Twitters too much, but the main thing is to come and join us here on the podcast on YouTube and Twitch. If you would like to support the books I write or the clothes that I make, you can find my website at www.moanamcadams.com.
Awesome. And last but not least, I am Dana. You can find me, of course, with the Moana Nui Podcast on our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Kickstarter. I mean, that Kickstarter.
Yes,
That's gonna be soon. TikTok and Twitter. We're all on all the almost all the platforms. And then also you can find me at Dana at Moana Nui for just as far as myself for the podcast. And my photography is at Danique Events on IG and Facebook. You can find me there and also on Twitter. So we would like to thank everybody for tuning in. Moana, I am going to, I know you were having technical difficulties. We're going to go ahead and do this drawing thing again because we had a lot of people engaging. So we always do at the end of our show a giveaway for everybody engaging comments. So let me do that.
Hopefully it's not us again.
And I know. So let us go ahead and do that. Let's see. All right, and see who our winner is for this evening for engaging in the comments, Michael. And hopefully it doesn't pick us.
Hopefully it'll be Ryan or Michael.
And let's try that again.
And you get
you get your
to myself.
Yeah, we need to talk to StreamYard. Like, how do we...
Wow, twice in a row.
Persistent.
You might need to play lottery.
I know, right?
I know. Okay, if somebody can give me some winning lottery numbers, I'll go ahead and play.
Okay.
All right. Hopefully it'll pick someone
Michael
other than
Ryan.
me and the one. There you go, Ryan. Congratulations, Ryan.
Oh, Lord.
So Ryan, we'll reach out and definitely send us your contact information so we can get you your Moana Nui prize pack for tuning in tonight. So we thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We thank all of our guests for continuing this conversation. We'd love to have all of you back for another panel because on this podcast, we do panels at least once a month on different topics. So I'll definitely reach out, see if any of y'all are interested in any of our upcoming topics to talk on those particular items and everything. And definitely tune in later on the end of this month. Shay will be back on the podcast talking. Her segment is called Rain Talks. So definitely tune in about her topic. She will be talking this at the end of this month about hyper independence. So tune in, learn about hyper independence. If you may have it and maybe calling it something else, and the signs and things you should be looking for in hyper independence. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the Moana Nui Podcast. Have a great evening and see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Aloha, everyone. Good night.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then. When they annexed Hawaii and called it cedar lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves a republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language was banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe Bay. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course. Versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course. Cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. Network out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell. Even if we have to ourselves, can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.